Hi, we're just going to get started shortly. So a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for your attendance to our second Women in Identity webinar. I'm Helen Chua, the Singapore Ambassador for Women in Identity, and I'm the Senior Sales Director at NEC Asia Pacific. We launched our Singapore chapter in August last year, and this is actually our second year. So I'm delighted that you have participated in this webinar, and I hope you enjoy the session as we discuss on the topic of facing the gender divide in leadership. Before we get started, there's a bit of housekeeping. The audience will be on mute except for the speakers. If you have any questions, please write them on the chat. We would appreciate if you can identify yourself in your question. All our webinars are recorded and you can get a copy of the link to the recording. If there's somebody that can't attend, they will also get the link. And lastly, I would appreciate at the end of this session, there'll be a survey form that we would want you to help us fill it out. This feedback form will also be sent to your email if you missed that at the end of the session. Women in Identity is a not-for-profit organization, and it's led and organized entirely by volunteers. To date, we have about 1,100 members across the world. We've got 18 ambassadors and also 4,500 followers and growing. Today, I'm delighted to introduce our second ambassador for Singapore, and she's Ms. Wee Mei Lin. And thanks for her volunteering to work alongside with me. And our mission at Women in Identity is to inspire, elevate, and support a more diverse workforce in the digital identity industry so that we can fulfill our vision, which is digital identity solutions built for everyone, built by everyone. A little bit of background on why we get started. Digital transformation needs to start with the user as we build new products. So it's about social change and enabling people to access things and do things we never thought possible just a few years ago. Digital identity is one of the keys to digital transformation. When we're talking about users and customers, we're talking about humans, and humans are really diverse. To build products for that level of diversity, we need diverse teams to ensure we come up with a wider range of solutions. Diverse teams perform better and are more profitable. It's something you and your organization should be buying into. We started Women in Identity as a not-for-profit organization to support organizations out there that are trying to do digital transformation. We know how hard it is. We have really senior people on our team who struggle to recruit a diverse range of people. We see how hard it is, and we're here to help. So we'd like for you to follow us with the following hashtags. And we're also looking for professionals to join us so we can work together to encourage a more diverse workforce, inclusive of all. At Women in Identity, our commitment is to highlight and elevate the talented people who are already doing great work, but who are often underrepresented across the industry. And we want to support and develop them. At the same time, we want to create opportunities for more diverse representation in industries across gender, age, and ethnicity as speakers and attendees. If you have any questions, do contact us at www.womeninidentity.org, or you can write to Mei Lin or myself at our email listed above. We'd like to hear from you, any input, queries. Of course, we'll be delighted if you join as a member of Women in Identity. Now we'd like to thank our sponsors who came forward in our early stages to help get us going. And if you like to get involved or you know that your company would like to be a sponsor, please see one of us or write to one of us. So today our topic is facing the gender divide in leadership. In Singapore, women hold 21% of senior management roles in corporations, a statistic which is on par with the international average. However, only 8% of corporate board members are women. This is far behind most developed economies where about 15 to 20% of board members are women. Today, we are privileged to have a great panel of speakers from very diverse backgrounds. I'll introduce each one of them. Can the speakers turn on your video, please? Thank you. We'll have, first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Alison Romney-Irene, who is the founder and CEO of Prodigy, a B2B SaaS company building leadership capacity for better business growth. She's an award-winning author for Pacing for Growth, adjunct professor at the NUS Business School, and serves on the advisory board to Shop Up in Bangladesh. In 2000, Alison founded Organization Solutions in Singapore and led the business to become a global consultancy building growth leader, team and organization capabilities across 5 continents. In 2021, she spun off Prodigy to empower inclusive growth by offering premium growth leadership services as an affordable, scalable, pay-as-you-go product. With Prodigy, individuals and teams grow in the flow of everyday work as their business scales growth capabilities. Alison earned her MA and PhD in industrial organizational psychology. Her domain expertise lies in large-scale organization design and transformation. Our next speaker is Ms. Christine Amar-Livar, who is a French-Swiss Filipina social entrepreneur, adventurer, author, and advocate. A passionate champion of female empowerment and environmental conservation. She co-founded Women on a Mission and founded her Planet Earth, 2 not-for-profit organizations that take all-female teams on pioneering expeditions as a way to support worthy causes. Her Planet Earth's primary objective is to raise awareness and funds for underprivileged women affected by climate change, while Women on a Mission aims to empower women who are subjected to violence and abuse. Since February 2021, Christine has been leading impact partnerships as part of the founding team at Force for Good, a social tech startup that is disrupting philanthropy and connecting change makers globally. She's also a consultant and advisor to several purpose-led organizations focused on sustainability, including cellular, agriculture, and impact investing. Christine is currently based in Singapore, where she lives with her husband and 4 children. Ms. Georgette Tan, she's the president of United Women Singapore, a non-profit organization advocating gender equality, women's empowerment, and focus on building the pipeline of future female leaders. She's on the board of the Singapore Council of Women's Organizations and is chair of Board Agenda, an initiative of SCWO focused on increasing the number of women on boards and senior management positions. Georgette serves on the Task Force on Family Violence, which is co-chaired by the Ministry of Social and Family Development and the Ministry of Home Affairs. Georgette was previously Senior Vice President, Communications at MasterCard, where for over 18 years, she was responsible for external and internal communication and launched MasterCard's knowledge leadership strategy with the establishment of numerous consumer, lifestyle, and gender indexes. She also spearheaded MasterCard's corporate social responsibility efforts, which focus on education and development programs to help empower women and children across the Asia-Pacific region. Prior to joining MasterCard, Georgette was Vice President of Communications at CNBC Asia and Dow Jones Asia, and also held senior communication roles at the Hong Kong Trade and Development Council and the Singapore Tourist Promotion Board. Last but not least, Dr. Sien Kwan Tai has been with FedEx Express for 23 years, went on overseas assignments, assuming HR leadership positions in Hong Kong and China for close to 15 years. She relocated to Shanghai in 2006 as part of her M&A core leadership team to establish FedEx Express domestic service in China, and subsequently as Managing Director, Human Resources China for both domestic and international express services. Kwan Tai returned to Singapore in 2015 to join the Asia Pacific Integration Planning Core team to develop strategies and plans for post-acquisition implementation. She's currently Managing Director, Employee Experience Design and Implementation, FedEx Express Asia Pacific with close to 30,000 employees. Let's welcome the panel speakers. Before we get started, just food for thought with two quotes by two great men of old. Albert Einstein said, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish's ability to climb a tree, it will live its life believing that it is stupid. The other quote that's really good is by William Shakespeare. Be not afraid of greatness. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and others have greatness thrust upon them. I think this reminded me of a movie, The Greatest Showman, where it speaks of a group of people who are not afraid to show who they believe they are glorious and make no apologies. And so we'll get started with the topic, facing the gender divide in leadership. Okay, I'll start off by asking Georgette the first question. Georgette, all of you are leaders in your organizations. Can you please tell us briefly how your career started and how you got to where you are today? What do you think are some of the key factors that contributed to your success? Georgette, you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
Oh my goodness, I thought I was not on mute. Okay, hi again, and Helen, thank you for allowing me to be part of this wonderful event today, and congratulations on second year for Women in Identity. To your question, I've been blessed, very fortunate that I've had a career that spanned a good number of years, allowed me to work in both public sector and then private sector, and then now my end goal, which is that of the giving sector, the nonprofit sector. And I guess, you know, I've been fortunate enough to have had good experiences, good timing, a little bit of luck along the way, great mentors, people who were supportive of me, and, you know, certainly great teams who helped bolster me, allowed me to lead them, and allowed me to learn along the way too. So I think I am nothing without the people around me who have helped put me on this path. And certainly it's made me realize that I need to do the same for all the other women who come after me.
Yeah, that's great to have a mentor and people that work well with you to support you in this promotion of leadership. Yeah,
absolutely. And role models. I think we all, you know, need to have role models that we can aspire to, look up to, but also people that we can just turn to for assistance, right? Because that's an important piece in anybody's career, in any sector.
Yeah, and the same question to you, Kwan Tai. How did you make it to be a leader at FedEx?
Thank you. I can relate to what Georgette said. We need support, and support at work and support at home. So I'm very thankful, having joined FedEx for 23 years and coming to 24, the culture, the values in FedEx enable equal opportunities for all of us, regardless of gender. And for home, I would like to share two things. One is definitely support from my mom, who come forward to help me with my young children when I need her to do so. And I still remember very, very quickly that way back 15 years ago, if not for my husband willing to downshift his dental practice, I wouldn't have gone to Hong Kong to launch my career at a regional role. So to sum up, we need support at home, we need support at work, and also be bold about it and talk and have conversations with our mentors, with our colleagues and our team members to help us. Back to you, Helen.
Yeah, so we noticed that there is support all around, including the home environment, work environment. But what social or economic, cultural, educational, and related infrastructure need to be created that will facilitate women becoming leaders? And how can the community and the public and private sectors come together to help women achieve their place in leadership roles? Alison, what do you think?
That is a massive, massive question. I mean, I think it's a problem that every single sector addresses, you know, whether you're in academia, whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in the government. So I basically think every institution plays a role. I think every organization that has leadership and has governance has a responsibility to think about representation of their different constituencies. I think sometimes there's a role for governments to have rules and frameworks. And I think that we as individuals have a big responsibility for ensuring fairness and equality and in a society that includes everyone.
So in your organization, since you are heading up the organization, what are the rules that you place in your organization to ensure equality in place?
Well, I mean, Organization Solutions is a small business and Prodigy is also a small business. So it's relatively easy for us. I think for us, this is going to sound kind of funny, but one of the things I always said to people was, well, you know, you're a woman-friendly workplace when you have breast milk in the refrigerator, you know, and it's true. I think most of my career, there's somebody in my organization's been, you know, breastfeeding or putting breast milk in the refrigerator. Hopefully no one's taken it for their coffee, but I think that we have to allow differentness. We have to allow people to not be fitting the same mold. We have to allow people to manage different schedules. We have to allow people to show up, to act differently and to be differently. And I think that's really difficult as leaders because it's a lot easier to hire people who are like us and who make us feel comfortable because they think the way we do. So I think that organizations that embrace diversity of all different types are better places for everybody. And I think a better place for everybody is a better place for women.
Certainly. Christine, in your not-for-profit organization, I'm sure you attract people of different backgrounds, and how do you actually promote them as part leaders together with you to work alongside, and how do you select people that do not think quite the same as you? Like what Alison said, most of us are just comfortable with people that think like us, act like us, but how do you break out of that mold to encourage other people to come alongside, work with you in your not-for-profit organizations?
That's a great question, Helen. And first of all, I just wanted to thank you for inviting me on this panel. I was so looking forward to it this week. And, it's a fantastic question because you're right. In my nonprofit, I get to work with many different kinds of women. And so there's several parts of the work we do. There's advocacy work, there's fundraising work. We also take women on expeditions, obviously. And I've had experience over the last 9 years to really get to know a lot of the women that I take with me on these trips. And they're extremely diverse. It started just with a group of friends, but in fact, it grew and attracted women from all over the world, from all the major cities around the world. And in my experience, I've taken women who are between 22 to 60 years old, of all races, nationality, even sexual preference. And it's been, so eye-opening and rewarding in many ways because it's become the norm for me, in fact, in my organization. It's as long as the bigger mission, which is other women supporting women in need, women who are more privileged, who are able to have the time to come on these trips and do fundraising to help other women in need, are completely diverse, and we're also helping women from all parts of the world affected by climate change, affected by violence, people living in developing countries mostly. And so, this is something that we encourage by celebrating differences. And I think that's the beautiful thing about diversity is you have to encourage it, but you also have to celebrate it, and encourage different points of view. So that goes into more inclusive communication styles. As a leader, you have to make sure everybody feels part of the conversation, respect different cultural norms. And so it's been a huge learning curve for me working in this space, coming from the corporate world originally, and now as a social entrepreneur. Because even the charity partners that we work with in Singapore and abroad are incredibly diverse as well in terms of their cultural background. So, for me, I feel like this is the best way to operate, and I definitely agree with what you said earlier, that every organization can benefit from having huge diversity and celebrating that.
Yeah. I think as leaders, we know we have to embrace diversity, and we know we need to put in place certain things that make us not feel comfortable. But it's just different age and different ethnicity. Everybody thinks differently, but like you say, you've done a great job embracing diversity and celebrating it. We've got one question from the panel, from the audience, and the question is, what do the panel think of putting gender quotas in place? I think, oftentimes organizations are so used to having, all these men on the boards, and shouldn't we place some quota and said you minimally have to have 30%, and then we'll have bingo, a diverse board in place. What do you think, Georgette?
I'll take that question. Look, I think there are lots of countries and territories here in the world that have started to look at trying to implement some form of quota system. In Singapore, I think we've gone the routing more of setting a target with the hopes that we are able to hit the target and exceed the target. It is a very slow process. There has been definitely some improvements made. And again, not taking it just on a broad average, but rather if you break it up, the top 100 listed companies in Singapore, that number is hovering around 17% of women on boards. If you look at the government sector, governmental agencies, the boards there, you're looking at across 20, 22, 23%, and then closer to 25. And then if you look at the nonprofit sector, the IPC sector, then you're talking about 27, 28%. We're not hitting the 30%, which very often is used as the benchmark. But if you talk to people who are in this space, you're going to get that divergent opinions. There are those that think, let's not have the quota system because, if you put in the quota system, then what may result is tokenism, having a woman put in place just because you have to have somebody there. And there are obviously some other issues related to just placing the appropriate women in the position, right? I think, and then you're going to get some opinions, which is you got to start there. You got to start with putting the quota system and then take it from there and work it from there. So there's no silver bullet. I think a lot depends on the environment. A lot depends on the level of maturity of businesses, new businesses that are coming into play, the governmental processes that are obviously, helping to drive that, and also organizations, whether it's organizations like Women in Identity or the Singapore Council of Women's Organizations, who, are there, and Board Agenda, who are there to help develop women so that they are board ready to step up into the role, to learn both the hard skills, right, as the technical skills, but also the softer human skills that are required to allow women to step up and be effective on a board. Taking a seat at the board is different from being effective on the board. So I think there are obviously many different opinions. but no silver pill, no silver bullet with as a result of setting the quota. And even if you look at some of the Nordic countries where the quotas were started early on, you talk to some of the people there, and they're saying, maybe we could have gone a different routing.
Okay, I think I'll pose this question to Kwan Tai, since she's in the HR role. How do you actually ensure? Do you really would you embrace a quota, or set by government, for example, to have 30% of certain roles? And how do HR then, if there's no quota set, then how does the HR role ensure that there's some gender equality in that regard?
Well, thank you. I can certainly share one perspective, which is my perspective, having been in FedEx for so many years and most part of my career. It is a culture and an equal opportunity given to all who meets the requirement. And we are very blessed. And naturally, because of the way we are structured, we are very blessed with, I can give you some statistics. Right? Our organization is headed by Kawal Prit, which is a lady. And out of the 3 mega regions in FedEx Express Global, 2 of the mega regions are headed by females. Karen in Europe, Kawal for EMEA, and Richard in Americas. And I have a quick check with the help of our Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Council called PMO. Today, we have about 25% of our officers are females, and a high 38% managing directors are females. And in terms of management ranked, we have 31% female as managers and 22% females as senior managers. How did it happen? Did we set a target to have that number? I don't remember we set a target. So whenever there's an opportunity, there's an open positions, it is opened for employees to apply. Same criteria being used by the panel to make a decision or selection decisions. So Helen, I can only share one perspective of how it works in the organization like FedEx.
Wow, we have to applaud FedEx for having so many women in the leadership roles. And
mind you, it's in the logistic field where it is a tough industry.
It's tough, yeah. So you guys have done well.
Thank you.
And I'd like to pose this question to all of you. Do you agree with this statement? The current practice in many organizations seem to have leadership roles by design for the male, while female become these leaders by default or by chance. Or, they have to work doubly hard if they want that same position. Maybe you can share some of your own experiences as to whether you chanced it, your success is by chance, or whether you deliberately was groomed for that position or that role. Any one of you?
Well, I mean, I can try to address that. I think this is an issue that you see in a lot of big companies more, where you have questions about how do you become successful? How do you get promoted? It's really interesting there is quite a bit of research, unfortunately, that does show that even if you take women that are 3 times more productive, they might get the same performance rating. So there is evidence to say that it is tougher in most organizations for women to be successful. I think that it varies so much by industry. I'm a psychologist. So in my company, when I was at Organization Solutions, we had over 200 coaches and associates and assessors, and we had women everywhere. At one point, I said, I'm going to start an equal opportunity program for men because we had so many women in that. Now I'm running a tech startup. And I actually confronted my tech team because they always used he. And I said, well, how many women don't we have women developers? And they said, yeah. I said, well, do you think they feel welcome here? And so I just think it varies so much by, are you in a big company? Are you in a little company? Are you, a psychologist? Are you in tech? So it varies a lot. A lot of the shadow of fairness is really set by top leadership. And so when they have a commitment to having fair practice and actually implement fair professional practice. And I'm glad Quantai is on the panel, because I think FedEx is probably an example of a company that actually has very good fair process. So fair process advantages women. Because one of the things that you see is that unfair process or lack of process tends to favor people who may be in the majority or be actually mediocre. But maybe they fit, they're more like the majority of people. So it's a very difficult question to answer.
Let me jump in here, Helen. I think I'm not so sure whether it's by design or default, and I completely agree with Alison what she's saying here. It is, it varies by industry, by territory, by market, the different cohorts. I think the issue also is more a matter of women actually feeling that they're competent, right, and stepping up into the role. Right. Yes, absolutely. A forward-thinking, progressive organization can certainly set the frameworks, right? Whether on the HR side, whether it's blind interviewing and applications and gender-neutral languaging, all those things are important. But at the end of the day, it's the culture of the supervisors and the managers as they're looking specifically for staff to be on the lookout and make a conscious effort to say, do I at least have a diverse slate? I think it starts there. And the onus is also on women to be able to say, I want to step up. I think I'm going to be good at the role. Maybe I don't know all that is required, but I'm prepared to learn. I'm prepared to put in the time to do so. And then I think you've got a situation when it's going to be robust. And from a hiring perspective, then you're going to have some really good talent that you can look at across the board and then pick the right person for the job, be it female or male.
So can I just jump in on that? I love that what you were talking about, Georgette, about you said, about feeling competent. And I actually, I have to say that in my own career, the best moments was when I allowed myself to not feel that I had to be competent, but I did something even if I didn't feel that I was ready. And certainly starting Prodigy was like so outside of my comfort zone. I felt stupid so much of the time. And I feel that we have to allow ourselves to feel incompetent too, that we have to know that it's okay and that we're going to take risks, we're going to make mistakes, we're going to fall down, and that's just okay, because we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to know everything in order to give it a try.
Yeah, and can I just add to that? I started my career in a very male-orientated industry. I started in sports marketing in the US for Nike. And very early on, I was groomed. I was certainly groomed because I was picked out with a group of about 30 young managers from around the world. About half of us were women, and we were put through a 2-year program. It was the first of its kind. And certainly we were picked because of our merit, and I'm sure they decided that these are potential high performers, etc. But it definitely switched the gears, and I benefited from that early grooming for sure. And it was actually my male boss who put my name in the hat for that. And so I think, as Georgette mentioned, there's a little bit of being at the right time at the right place, certainly a bit of luck, and even just where we come from as well. Growing up in a loving home, having a good education, having a great start in life is also very lucky. Not that everyone has that everywhere, and recognizing that is really important. But I do think that as you grow in your career and as you look back, as you get a bit older, certainly the hard work has to come into play, and the wanting those opportunities, those opportunities that really push you outside of your comfort zone, the leadership chances that come where you have to put your hand up and be uncomfortable and have that pressure. And so I think that for us women, definitely support, especially when you're young, starting out, and having mentors or bosses that really push for you and give you a chance. is so important. But ultimately, I do believe that we can give ourselves that credit that if you do succeed, it's also because you really wanted it and you push for it. So it's a combination of things. Luck also comes into play, as I said, early on. And there's a lot of things that can come into play with helping a woman's career, but support is important, and wanting that challenge, I think, is a big part of it too.
I'm going to add to that because I think that's perfect. Just to say that I think women need to continually build their own brand. And Christine, I think you're a huge advocate of this. I know you are. We need to invest in our own brand. We need to be confident, and Alison is right. We need to sometimes go out of our comfort zone and push ourselves. And that's great when we've got this great support. And if we fall down, that's great. Our support helps us and picks us up. But we've got to do that ourselves, and we've got to continue to invest and build our own brand, because that's the only way to get recognized. That's the only way, certainly, for people to bring you in, whether it's on a project basis or for a promotion or for a posting overseas, right? If you're an organization, you've got to get on everybody's radar. And you do that by
true, Georgette. I really believe in that, as you said. I think the values that you have early on in your life have to align with all the actions that you take, and as a result of that, you do build a brand. You start standing for something, and then people come to you, and offer you opportunities that you then have to take, of course, with courage and humility. But I do think that the brand, even if you are in a big corporate organization or as an entrepreneur, having those clear values and what you stand for, and speaking your truth is such an important part of then growing as a leader in your community and in your organization, because you do stand for something, and people recognize that. And I think that's part of leadership too, is that other people can see that.
Correct. And it's trust. You're actually investing and building in trust so that others will trust you.
Yeah, I think the word is trust. People have to believe in, maybe not necessarily what you can do now, but they have to believe in you having that potential to do the job, or having that right values, and being able to stand up for those values are very important elements of being selected and groomed for leaders.
And if I may, I just add one perspective, learning from my own experience. Hopefully, those who are listening can progress faster than I am. One of the things that I chanced upon a book is what is holding us back, holding women back. One of which is I can relate to is putting my job before my career. Meaning to say, so targeted in completing and doing my job so well that I don't look up and plan what are my next move, what are my next project, what are some of the roles that I can play in order to advance my own career. So perhaps if this relates to you, you can consider this point. Check and see whether whatever you're doing is leading you to your career goal that you have. And another tip that I was given is, if I have to redo and my role, my job, if I know that I stayed in FedEx for so long, I would have gone into a job outside HR and can always come back to HR. So we do appreciate cross-functional move, and we are very thankful that FedEx as an organization encourage employees to consider lateral move to gain the exposure, to gain the experience, use transfer skills to hope to get better at acquiring new skills and organizing knowledge, and be more ready, whether we come back to our own function or whether we continue to move on to other functions to progress in our career. So this is one perspective, Helen.
Wow, I think I like this FedEx lateral move, opportunity, because sometimes when you do a lateral move, you realize that you have a hidden talent that surface because they let you do certain things that you otherwise would not have chosen, because you didn't think you had that talent. So I think it's great that FedEx has this opportunity for its employees.
Right. Yeah, because promotion is not, advancement doesn't mean promotion.
Yeah.
Right. Advancement is getting more skill sets that can prepare us for a higher level positions down the road. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we've got a question from the panel, and it's talking about in the UK, the Bank of England and the Financial Conduct Authority have put out a consultation to have senior staff at financial services firms to have pay based on diversity performance to deal with the fact that there is not enough diversity in financial services. This is the first we've seen in the UK where there's penalties in place for lack of diversity. So what do the panel think of financial penalties?
Is it financial penalties to the company or the individual?
I think it's to the companies because they've not, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I have to say my feeling about that is that I'm not a big fan of that. I think when you start to link pay to things, you can get all kinds of gaming in the system. And I'm going to say I'm the biggest advocate of being more aggressive in moving women into senior roles. I'm very frustrated that we've not made more progress in governments and companies. I also know that when you associate financial penalties to things, you create unintended consequences. So that generally, I'm not a fan of that.
I think I agree with you, Alison. I don't think it's necessary to have some sort of financial punishment. There's a lot of pressure you can put when you look at trends not going the right way with enough women in leadership, within companies to make sure that we do get those targets. And there are ways to do it. There are hacks to do that as well, where you have those frank discussions with managers and try to understand why there are some women who've left the group, and really, I think the target approach for me is the most efficient if it's done in a very organized and KPI focused way, in the sense that we're really looking at some serious progress and looking at the numbers and the data that need to point in the right direction. I think going towards a punitive model just will probably put a lot of people off, and I don't think that's where we want to go personally.
Yeah, I think, Georgette mentioned about tokenization. When you have penalties, you have quotas in place, people do it because, they are trying to avoid it, but that's just like a token. They do it because they have to do it, not because they believe in it. And that really defeats the purpose, because you really want people to embrace diversity and not do it because they have to do it. Yeah. And, I think you have read on some articles that talk about, people in the organization that are in their coffee room, they would talk about, oh, she's on maternity leave again, and just put down about motherhood because it's 4 months maternity leave and this lady is not around and she's a leader or she's groomed to be a leader, that sort of talk. So I think part of it is cultural. So how do you think about cultural, traditional, or even religious beliefs that impede or promote the acceptance of women as leaders?
That is so tough, right? Because on one hand, you say, let's value differences, let's celebrate diversity. And so like part of me says that means I respect cultural differences, I respect religious differences. At the same time, as an employer, I can remember one time we were interviewing someone for a role, and she came in and she wouldn't shake hands with any of the men. And it was really a dilemma for me. Because here it was, I was really excited because it was a woman for a technical role, but because of her belief system, she wouldn't engage with any of the men. And that created a problem. And there were other reasons why we didn't hire her. That was not the reason, but that moment was very uncomfortable to me to think, wow, here I am saying, oh, I appreciate all these differences, and yet I don't want that difference. So I do believe that as leaders, we have to say, what's my true north? Maybe some cultures believe in molesting children or women. I'm never going to accept it. There's just there's lines that we say that we will choose not to believe. But I find that that's a very challenging line to find.
I also think that our region, Asia Pacific, is a really interesting one for DEI. 60% of the world population is in Asia Pacific. We have one of the most diverse and rich multicultural areas in the world. And in some cases, we are very much exactly what's happening, like with the gender gap report that came out in 2021 earlier this year, that said that we're 135 years away from reaching gender parity. And in other parts of Asia Pacific, we have two of the most gender equal societies in the world, the Philippines and New Zealand. And so I think DEI, especially in our region, is hugely, varies hugely depending on the country. As you said, norms of women and girls entering the workforce, even dress codes, approach access to education, progression of women's leadership. So it's a really interesting one. And I think the only thing that we can do is all commit to learning more and respecting other cultural differences, and yet, of course, supporting more women in leadership, because we know that ultimately it's the right thing, not just in terms of principle, but also in terms of innovation and business success. But it's a fascinating topic, and I think there's no right answer, because in parts of Asia we look at diversity very differently than in the West, for example. It's also about harmony, and in Singapore we call it fair labor practices. There's so many terms that are slightly different per market. So there's no quick fix or quick answer for one country or the other, I think.
I think what it is also is you have to see the issue of women in leadership as part of a continuum too. It's not in isolation. You have the earliest issue that we grapple with is that a pipeline. All right, how do you build that pipeline and you get the women interested in building a career, having a career? The second issue is that of retention, right? And keeping them in. And if they stay, then they have a better chance of they come back, certainly. They have a better chance of going into a leadership position. And then only can you talk about leadership. And you start with that pipeline and you inculcate the right thought process, the mindset shifts, right, for both men and women, certainly, or on the value that women bring in any organization, large or small. And then it continues on, and then you can build that into leadership.
From a personal level and an individual level, assuming one decides to start a family, it's very important to have a conversation as well before the individual decide that I am the only one that should be doing alone, taking care of the baby. So if one decides to have and start a family, let's have a conversation with our boss, with our family, not just husband, right? So explore alternative before saying that I will take a back seat, because there may be men who actually doesn't mind for making a family decisions to say, hey, looking at two of us, maybe, you go ahead. I'll take care. Or it could be, we have a support system in the family. So I think before, if anyone would like to consider starting a family, it is possible to have success at home and at work. We just have to seek help, to think about it, have a goal, and have a strategy around leaving and re-entering the workforce.
Yeah,
and that's where I think, if you've got a great boss, a supervisor, a manager who's open-minded and who is flexible, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with that, right? And if you've got an organization that has these great policies and that is open for these discussions, that's how you retain high quality women, high performing women, because they know that they're going to be valued, and that the organization values them enough to say, we'll work around your schedule, we'll make it work. Right? Yes.
It's so important, isn't it? And unfortunately, during the pandemic, we've seen a lot of women lose more jobs than men. I think we had about 64 million women lost jobs last year. And the main reason for that is because of what the pandemic caused in terms of disruption with childcare and school closures. And so I think moving forward, this point that you're both making, Georgette and Pani, is so important, because the women need more safety nets and more flexibility, as you said, to stay in leadership roles and groom their careers, because they shouldn't have to make the choice between, the career and taking care of children, and yet
Mhm.
the truth is we're still primary caregivers at home. It's still the case in most countries. So employers can really step up, with this need, I think, especially post-pandemic, so that we don't have so many losses moving forward.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I can
think
give
the,
a.
oh, go ahead, Alison, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to give a perspective because in this instance, I'm the boss, so I'm the employer, and I'm a mom. I've adopted 2 daughters who are now grown up, and the one thing I can say is that if men want to help women, they can help be better at home. And so, or any partner needs to be helpful at home. And so I've been really fortunate in that way, but I was really lucky early on in my career. I had a boss who was a woman, and I asked her, I said, Vicky, how do you do it all? And she said, well, I never feel guilty. And I always love that. And I've told so many women through the years, I'm like, you don't have to be a perfect mom. You don't have to be a perfect boss. Just be good enough, and don't ever feel guilty. And, I think I'm a decent mom. My girls grew up. They're pretty good people. I'm proud of them. My business has been good. It's grown. And I feel like, we can have it all. We may not be able to have it all at the same time. But I think sometimes we just tend to think about it's like all or nothing.
But we put too much pressure on ourselves half the time too, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's perhaps what's holding us back. At the same time, and I have to say this just sounds really corny, but we have to learn to be a little bit selfish. We have to learn to put ourselves first very often. We're always putting everybody ahead of us, whether it's our families, our children, certainly our children, the husbands, our parents, the grandparents, the elderly, everybody. And then what happens to us? Now, so we have to learn to be a little bit selfish.
I so agree with that. I think definitely we have too much mom guilt, and we should just also tap ourselves on the shoulder and the back and say, I deserve this. And a lot of times when, opportunities come our way, I mean, as you know, boards are looking for more women, to diversify their members. And, instead of worrying too much about, is this just to make up the number? I think we just take the opportunity and just make the best of it and show them, and say, I deserve this. Plus, the business case for diversity gets stronger every year, and companies that have more diverse boards are more successful anyway, so they should just thank us. I really feel strongly about that, and I think a lot of men think that way, so we should think more like that, like I deserve it, maybe I'm not completely ready, but I'm going to make myself ready, and just have that confidence.
Make it till you make it, baby.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I wanted us to answer Paige and Sia's question. I loved it about the advice for young women trying to find career success.
Right. Personally, I think you guys talk about supportive bosses and supportive family, and I find supportive co-workers just as important. They are just allies to us. When we decide to have a child, your co-workers could jump in and take extra work for you, help you out with the work, and people at work are, if they are your allies, they can help you in your advancement to leadership. And I think for career success, it's to forge that relationship at work, both with bosses as well as with male and female co-workers, and to really execute what I would call a servant leadership, to serve the others when you have the time, when you have the capability to do so. You need to work around their schedule and help them out, because there are times when you need their help and now they need your help. So as a young person starting out, I would just have that humility, have that servant leadership quality in me, and do whatever I can to help people at work, because there'll come a time when I need the help.
It's so true. And actually, one of my favorite quotes that I heard from a friend said that the best networking is making other people successful. Helping them up, supporting them, and not doing it because you want their help, just because you really care, and that's the right thing to do, of course. And it comes back in so many different ways. People really don't forget, and good things come your way too. When you have that attitude, I think.
Let me try to see if we can provide a couple of nuggets of advice for Pei-Jun here. I think I go back to, you've got to build trust, right? And you have to work at it. You build your brand, you build trust so that others trust you and want to work with you. And part of it is finding what you love to do. Okay, it's one thing to clearly just do a job, but you do a job so much better when you're passionate about it, when you have fire in the belly and you go the extra mile because it's really what you want to do. So, for the young women, certainly you may not hit that right at the start, and you may have to try a few places, try a few different roles actually. So this goes back to lateral moves and the opportunity to try out different things. Because then you'll find what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and you will excel no matter what. And I'm a firm believer in all the above for building the brand, building the trust, and being extremely passionate about what you want to do moving forward.
Can I also add that when you join the organization, it's not just a job. Consider it as a career. And at the get-go, build allies, because there are a lot of support systems that you may find among your peers, amongst your bosses, and also your team members. And like many of the panelists have mentioned, help others to be successful, and then we will be successful. And also the other thing is about the 70-20-10 rule, meaning to say, identify, volunteer for projects, venture into new roles, because we learn 70% by doing, 20% from others, and 10% in the classroom. So keep that in mind. We're never ready. We're never 100% ready. So just do it. Apply Nike concept, right, Christine?
I love it. One of the things that I've encouraged my daughters has been to not think that there's only one way. And I describe it to them as worlds. I'm like, there's different worlds where you love sound. You can do sound you can be in the gaming industry. You can be in theater. You can do this. I think sometimes we get stuck on this idea that I have to do a certain path. And unfortunately, sometimes people have parents that are really very adamant that, you must become an engineer or you must be a doctor. And so I do think it's really important to think there's options in life, and I want some optionality. I do think that what you want to do is make sure that you have a good sense of what it takes to be successful in these different worlds, and that you begin to build the capabilities that you're going to need to be able to excel, and that you consider life to be a journey of learning, and that you're just constantly acquiring skills and capabilities and pushing and challenging. I feel like that's great advice. And I know for me personally, what had a huge impact in my life was losing my mom and dad when I was 40. And I looked at their life, which was such a worthy life. I mean, they were amazing. And it really told me, make sure that the life we lead is the one that was worthy for us, and I feel like that's an important thing for us to say. What's that life? What's that vision I have for my life? How do I want to have an impact in the world?
I love that, Alison. Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. I would add that one of the things that I love doing at night, is a couple of thoughts. I have a thought of gratitude for where I've come from and for where I am in my life. But I also force myself to visualize my dreams. And I think that's really good and really important for everyone, and especially when you're young. It's never too early to start to dream about what you want, visualize what you see in terms of a career or even a family, an occupation. And you will see that if you do that repeatedly, it's a form of meditation in a way. You will attract those opportunities. You will find ways to go after them. I'm a strong believer in projecting those hopes and dreams and doing it constantly, and regularly, because there's power in that. There's real power in that, and I think that it brings those opportunities your way. So don't forget to do that.
And can I make a pitch for the fact that for young women, especially, don't rule out the fact that you can, even at a young age, contribute and give. All right, don't wait and say, well, I'll do that later on in life. It's never too early, or for the matter too late, to get involved, whether it's community projects, charities, join an NGO, pick up a cause, because I think that's a great way for you to actually feel very fulfilled, and may actually be a factor in how you view your life as being successful.
That's good.
Yeah, and we've got a question on the Q&A. How do we get more men to listen to webinars like these and get more men involved in this sort of conversation? Because without male support, will we see meaningful change?
Definitely, you need the men. You need the male allies. I think there are a couple of men on this call alone. They are the enlightened ones. We need more, clearly. And we hope that for every man that is there, he'll bring a couple of men along too, and his mates and his friends. And we as women need to make sure that men are brought on this journey, right? And again, it starts young. The younger we can get them to value the role that women play, understand the value of diversity, I think we stand a better chance. The next generation stands a better chance of having more of this equal playing field, right?
Definitely. I think it starts also with bringing up our boys, the ones of us who have boys at home, such an important part, treating them the same way as if you have a daughter, talking to them about what's really important in terms of respecting women. That piece is really important, and we can probably all do that better. As educators, if there are educators out there as well. And then I do believe in celebrating the men. Like Georgette said, there are a few men on this call, and really celebrating the ones that are open to listening to this conversation, which is so important. Because we need them as allies. We need men not just as allies, but as advocates. Because unfortunately, a lot of time, issues in our society like violence against women, or even sexual harassment, of women and even children, are thought of as women's issues, but they're also men's issues. They're society's issues. And so it's really, I think all of us, whenever we are able to have a voice about this topic, we should ask for more men to come on this journey with us, because it will build a better society, a better world anyway, and they'll benefit from it too. So it's a constant advocacy that we all need to do. I think all of us can be advocates for bringing more men into the conversation.
What do you think? Would it really help if we have, probably put courses in school when they're kids, they just come into primary school, have a course on, on the difference in the gender, and what the different roles play, and how important it is for the other role versus for the other gender versus what they are. I mean, women have to understand the man's role, and men have to understand the women's roles as well. So, what do you think if we put such courses in school and start them young?
Already some basics in place as part of the curriculum here in Singapore, and as part of what they call CCE, right? The extended curriculum, citizenship and character education.
Right.
But I can speak for United Women Singapore. We just launched a program called Boys Empowered, where we actually are taking a program, different modules to the various schools to teach the boys, to open them up, allow them to understand, the sensitivities around issues, around language, consent, healthy relationships, because yes, it is about starting them younger, giving them role models, really healthy role models. And then again, I think we stand a good chance for that next generation to have more of a supportive male ally community.
Is that going to both locals, international, primary school?
Absolutely. Yes. It kickstarted just a little over a month ago, and we're running some programs, bringing it to the schools. And at the end of the year, we're actually launching a community summit, a Boys Empowered Community Summit.
Oh, wow.
Quite empowered. Look
So
at
this
that.
is supported by our Ministry of Education?
Well, right now it's run by United Women Singapore. It has had the support of the Ministry of Social and Family Development, MSF.
Oh, okay.
But again, MOE has its own curriculum, and we're in talks with them already. Yes.
Hey, Georgie, I'm going to get you to speak to the National University of Singapore Society, which I'm on the board. To
Absolutely.
share more. Yes.
It was interesting, Helen, when you were using the language you were using earlier, you were saying about the role of women and the role of men. And I kind of think that one of the challenges we have as a society is that we have an expectation that men and women have different roles. Or, if you're a woman, you're going to be this way. Or if you're a man, you're supposed to be this way. And so I guess I really think it's important for us to continuously challenge the assumptions we have about gender. Like if I say nurse, everyone thinks female, right? And if I say surgeon, we think male, right? So there's just such stereotypes in society. And so I think we all have to try to bring examples out of the unordinary, right? And not allow people to think that, oh, if you are a woman, you are supposed to be this way, or you're supposed to behave this way, or a man's supposed to be this way. The more we can break those barriers, I feel the better it is for everybody. I'm a big advocate of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes my mind gets into this stereotype roles, and it's really not the right way to think of gender, because a male, like motherhood and taking household chores, for example, you think, well, women should do that, but men can do that just as well. So it's not the roles, but rather the sensitivity of each.
I have to share this funny story with my mom. So my mom she couldn't stand the word feminism. She thought she had heard the word feminist and she thought of women out burning their bras on the streets. And so one day I said, Mom, do you think that if a man and a woman are equally qualified, they should have an equal chance of getting a job? And she said, well, yes, I do. And I said, and do you think that a man and a woman that are, they're vying for promotions should have an equal probability of success, assuming that they're equally qualified? She said, why, yes, I do. I said, and do you think that if they're doing similar work that they should be paid, and similarly, that women shouldn't be paid 70 or 60% of the male? And she goes, why, yes, I do. And then her eyes got really big and she said, oh, Allie, I must be a feminist. So yeah, I think we need to be having conversations with people around us and our moms and our dads and our kids about, who are we and what are we about?
So true. It could be unconscious biasness, and we're going to catch ourselves, be mindful of that at home, at work, at the community we served. We have to deal with that unconscious biasness.
Yeah. At Women Identity, we know all of us are biased, because of the way we're brought up, because of the way, others influence us. And a lot of times we are not conscious. We're just not conscious of these biases until it's highlighted. And then you become aware, and you do want to get rid of those biases because it does stifle in your progression in life, really. There's a question in the Q&A. How do you think the effort of enterprise in DE&I would help to make things change, compared with the impact of cultural traditions of society on national law?
Definitely, it will help. The multi-dimensional, multi-pronged approach is so important, right? At home, at work, at a community. So maybe I could share what's happening in FedEx as just an example. We have a diversity DE&I council, and it's headed by the senior vice president of legal and our vice president of HR. It has 5 pillars, and each pillars are headed up by a functional leader, and it could be male, it could be female. But all I'm saying is that there is focus, a lot of sponsorship, as well as a lot of volunteers. We have 200 volunteers from employees of different levels, into gender pillar, into disability pillar, into the LGBT plus pillars, multicultural and generation pillars. So that created a lot of awareness, a lot of interest, and also empower employees to come forth and also be more aware of if there's any biasness. So I'm very thankful of the focus, and it's a global initiative. And for Asia Pacific and AMIR, which is part of, including MISA, we have that as a common goal and a common objective in the organization. So that helps at the organization level.
There's another question in the chat, in the Q&A. How relevant will it be to continue to solely track the representation of women in various leadership roles with the gender variation increasing? Should these conversations and studies then be broadened to include all gender variants in this case?
Well, I love that question. I think the bifurcation, the male-female categorization that's used in organizations is really a reflection of modern definitions and values of society, right? And laws around representation of different groups. I have, in my view, the fact that we track groups is a fact that we have failed to have representation of groups. And so that's just my own personal opinion. I mean, I'm so impatient for us to not have to do that. I'm so impatient to not have to be counting.
But at the same time, we still need to measure, and we still need to track and monitor and put it on the right track. You still need to have that, don't you, El?
Yeah. But I think the question was really about how many categories we track, and we can certainly see that in research now. It used to be you would always tick the box, male, female, and now you have lots of options, or you can say I prefer not to say. So I do think that as a society we're becoming much broader in our view of gender, and the conceptualization of gender as a scale. How quickly organizations embrace that and think about that as a way to classify and count, I don't think we're going to see that in my lifetime.
I mean, the whole space of DEI, I mean, it was originally just diversity and inclusion, and only the E got added more recently. Even D&I is a relatively new concept. I mean, 50 years ago, you wouldn't be hearing about this. Even 25 years ago, only very progressive, forward-thinking organizations had DEI committees, let alone a DEI senior executive, taking the lead. So it's still relatively early days, but I think I agree with what Alison is saying. It'll be good to come to a point when we don't have to measure it.
I've got a question for the panel speakers. With renewed focus across the corporate world on DEI, has there been a time when you felt you were in leadership team just to make up the diversity number, or do you really feel that you belong? And what contributed to that feeling? Like, are you there to just make up numbers, or you really contributed and you're there?
I'll go first. I don't think I ever felt in any of the organizations that I worked for that I was a token woman on any committee, panel, or senior management. I mean, it's always been the case where there weren't enough women in any of these situations, in any of these committees, at any of the management or board tables, right? We could have done with more. I always made it a point whenever I went for, the larger meetings, I would look around the room and take count and like, how many women do we have? And for these global meetings, especially, do we have at least a third of the room? Are we talking about, 20%? And it varied. It varied between 20, 25%. And that was partly an organization piece and a play and partly an industry play, I think. So I was always conscious of it. I don't think I was ever made to feel like I was just a diversity placement. And I'm grateful for that. But clearly there's still always a lot more to be done. I think what probably is encouraging is that the women that are included are taking different roles that we know have been more generally male dominant roles or functions, and we're starting to see women in not just the sales function, but in the tech and innovation function and the product delivery side. So which, traditionally, or certainly in the past, were more male dominant.
My perspective, personal experience, I've never felt that I was promoted into a job because we need to make up a number. And I also sit on a panel where we select directors and managers. Is basically whether the person can or cannot do the job. Given all things being equal, which candidate can do a better job, regardless of gender? So.
Yeah, and oftentimes when you're in a panel or around a table and you're one of the few women, you think to yourself, you can they have actually let you in, so they're open to let more women in, and you feel glad that the step is moving forward. At least there's you and probably one other person, but you see that, you see that progress, and it makes me excited because, there was a time where probably around the table is all men, there's no women. And now, if you're around the table or others that are around the board, we're heading in the right direction.
So true. And I don't know if you remember sorry, Georgette, what were you saying?
Just very slowly, the pace of which, we're headed in the right direction, but
we are, thankfully, slowly but surely. Sometimes I still get invitations to attend panels where it's all men, which I refuse to go and see. And I actually tell the organizer my point of view about it. But it's rare now, more and more. I think people realize that you can't have an all-male panel. It's completely, outdated. But sadly, maybe 10 years ago it was, or even less, it was still happening,
Yeah. I think you should go and participate to show that, women can just do as much as the men can in that panel.
No, what happens is that the woman becomes the moderator. And so on stage, you have a woman on the panel, but she's actually not one of the panelists per se.
Right.
Invited as a panelist.
Right. Yeah, and Pajan has another question. What are your top tips for juggling motherhood and a career? How do you avoid comparing yourself to other mothers, as well as other co-workers, whether they're male, female, or younger colleagues?
Well, I shared my secret to life happiness, which was to allow yourself to just be average in most things, and then pick a few where you really want to excel, because and to really be way more compassionate with yourself than probably your mother was with herself. I think that I just don't have any energy to compare myself to other people. So I don't identify with that at all. I have enough. I just try to just do my best. And so I always encourage other people, don't spend your life comparing yourself. Don't try to be anyone else, because that job's already taken. Be yourself and just worry about what's the life that you're leading and how are you finding the right balance. And don't try to be perfect, and don't be guilty. Don't ever feel like you have to be apologizing to your children, say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't want to do this, because then it makes them think, wow, why are you doing that? Why are you doing something you don't like? And I think that that's a tension that a lot of moms feel. They're somehow not being a good mom if they're really enjoying their work. So I think it's okay to love the work we do and to love our family or our dog. That's okay.
I think you're right. It's less about get that guilt off your back. Don't be guilty. As long as you've done a really good job, as long as you've put in, the 500% that you want to put in. But then if you're not happy, then obviously there's something wrong there. Then you need to assess and find out what it is that you need, what's going to make you happy. I think also one of the things I guess I've always used as a guide is your moral compass has to be north. It has to face north, right? You've got to be able to sleep at night. So you live by your conscience and you do make your decisions by your conscience. If you're needed by your family, then do what you have to with your family, right? Because that's the right thing to do. And be upfront with your supervisor, your manager, the management. This is a rough time, but there are other times when if you need to be part of a team and work overnight and put in the extra hours, then the family is going to understand too. So what is it that at the end of the day, you're going to have to live with yourself. So
I think that's really good, Georgette. I really agree with you. And I also think that the importance of having that support system, that it's not always easy to organize, but that is something worth really thinking hard about, when you're trying to have a career and family and so many other demands, not being afraid to call in the cavalry, as I called my mom. Sometimes she used to come a lot over, when the kids were young. And if you're able to have, it's true what they say, it takes a village to raise a child, right? I mean, it's not just the parents, sometimes it's the extended family, the community, the teachers, and having an understanding boss, having that open dialogue as well, making them understand that this is the situation at home and I need a bit more flexibility. And hopefully more and more, this is something that, big corporations can have, a little bit more understanding around. I think the working from home has definitely opened those opportunities for young mothers coming up. I think that's really good. But yeah, the support system is so important, key. And it's also maybe managing your partner, making sure they put in the same amount of time, supporting with the housework and the care. You have to stand up for yourself. And ultimately it comes down to self-esteem as well, because you feel you deserve that support. Because if you don't feel you deserve that support, then you don't ask for it. And then it goes back to that guilt, doesn't it?
It is.
Maybe I add two more.
Right? They're going to be, you're going to miss one of your kids' recitals. You're going
absolutely. I've done that.
On account of it, go to where it really, really makes it matters.
Yeah.
Right? The little ones, don't sweat the small stuff and everything. There's so much small stuff along the way. So don't sweat the small.
True. Yeah, true. Maybe I'll squeeze in two more. One of which is my children told me, Mom, it's okay to say no when I request. I know I ask a lot of things from you, drive me to this place and that place, but it's okay if you say you can't. We can understand. And another tips my children gave me, there are three young adults, by the way, 30, 28, and 26. Why don't you delegate some work to Dad? Why must it be always you? Maybe consider that tip too.
Yeah, I think kids are more understanding than we think. They get it. If mommy's too busy and there's other things, to be done, and it makes them a little bit more independent too. When you're not a helicopter parent.
Yeah. I thought I had this one very practical thing that I learned when my children were young, which was, if you're a working mom, never hang out with moms that are not currently working. Hang out with moms that are working. And that I just have always found, if you want to feel good about yourself, hang out with people who are facing similar challenges, because if you're feeling this sort of, oh, what's wrong, it's because you're just comparing yourself to a different group, and that's for different choices, and that's fine, whatever you want to do. But I found, for me, if I was hanging out with moms that were not currently working, I did not enjoy myself as much. and it made me feel like less than, or oh my gosh, I would say to my husband, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible mom. And he's like, don't hang out with those women. And so I have learned that, it's really important for us to surround ourselves with people who understand the situation that we're in, that can support us, that can, be a, voice of reason and say, don't sweat it. Right. I think that's great.
Yeah, I think it's nice to do that, and also maybe even a combination, because I always feel that when you have again that diversity around you of women who are stay-at-home moms, which are doing an amazing job as well, have different challenges, and also women who have careers and families. I think what I've tried to do over the years is actually have a bit of a combination around me, because I feel I can learn from all of them. In the sense that it's there's not one size fits all, and although sometimes you're right, it's not so easy to find those groups and blend them, but I found that over the years, and I've had 4 kids with 2 and then 5 years in between, and then 2 more. I've had so many different groups, moms having babies and moms having older kids, and I do think that it's quite a beautiful thing to have a blend where you also sometimes switch a little bit when you're with one group, and a little bit different, in different conversations, which are also rich and interesting with the other. So I found that was a nice formula for me, because I do enjoy both types as well.
Yeah, and Pajan had the second part of the question about comparison, and I totally agree with Alison. I don't want to compare myself with somebody else, because you're unique. You do your job the best, right? And I think having that communication with your boss is important. Once you've done all that you can, and you've communicated with your boss, I personally, I've always said that things will just get, in place for you. It would never be something that falls out and something that's unexpected, and your boss did something that you don't know. And I just always think that if you do the best you can, and like Georgette said, if you have a brand, you have the trust of the company and your bosses, you don't have to compare. You will get to where you need to be. Yeah, and it's 4:28 now. We don't have any more questions, so we're just gonna have to wrap up. You guys got any final comments or input?
I just want to say thank you for everyone for joining, and Helen for organizing it. This was really fun for me. I appreciate the commitment and what the organization's doing, and I'm happy to be able to be part of it.
Same here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Helen. Thank you. It was wonderful.
I love the fact that it's women in identity. So, it's such a meaty, substantive area of business, and in moving forward, it's going to get so much more important. So, all you ladies, you should give yourself a pat on the back.
Yes. And the men who joined us as well.
There you go. Absolutely. There were a few. Notice there were.
Awesome.
And I think if maybe one last message, if anyone on who joined, the attendees want to reach out, we're happy to connect, on LinkedIn, or even I'm on Instagram as well, and really happy to stay in touch, because I appreciate you joining this panel that Helen organized, and wonderful to be with my co-panelists as well. So thank you, everyone.
Yes, thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks to all of you for your time this afternoon, and also our attendees for participating. And before we end, I'd like to share the slides. So we'd like to thank our sponsors again for actually coming alongside with us. Actually, the sponsorship that they bring to the table is for our website, and nobody gets paid on the in this organization. And we would like to bring up the next screen that shows you can actually join us. Yeah, so we'd like to encourage you to join us. As you've heard, women and identity, you want to be a catalyst for change, and you feel you want to contribute to the Singapore community of bringing up the women in the unrepresented areas of leadership or otherwise. We'd like for you to join us as a member. So visit our website. You can always contact us. Like Christine said, they are all on LinkedIn, social media. You can always link up to our panel speakers, or you can always write to me. We can link you up. And there's a feedback survey coming up, so please do fill up the feedback form to help us. So thank you very much for all your time. Goodbye.